He used to answer within minutes. A spark, a warmth, something you could feel in your chest when his name lit up your screen. His words carried a weight, even when they were short. You read them twice, maybe 3 times, and smiled. But now there's silence. Messages left on read, or worse, not even opened. And in that quiet, your mind becomes a war zone. Thoughts racing, heart aching, wondering, did I do something wrong? Was I too much? Is he just done? And still, there's a voice inside you, soft but persistent, whispering, no, this can't be the end. Not like this. Let me tell you something, and I hope it lands where it needs to. He's not ignoring you, at least, not in the way you think. There's something deeper going on here. Something that might have nothing to do with your worth, your beauty, your value, or the love you gave. Something buried inside him, silent, unseen, but powerful. And once we begin to understand this, once we begin to see clearly, the pain starts to shift. It doesn't vanish, but it begins to make sense. Because sometimes, when someone disappears, they're not rejecting you, they're running from something they don't know how to name. And sometimes, silence is not absence. It's a scream they've turned inward. If you've ever stared at your phone, wondering why he pulled away when everything felt so real, if you've ever questioned your own worth because someone couldn't meet you where you stood, if you've ever whispered to yourself, what did I do wrong? You are not alone. And no, you are not broken. In this video, I'm going to show you a different perspective. Not a theory, not a list of rules, but a mirror. One that reflects what's really going on beneath the surface in him and in you. Stay with me, breathe. You don't have to solve anything right now. Just listen. Let the words find the parts of you that have been waiting to feel understood. And if this already feels like it's speaking to something real inside you, like it's putting a hand on a wound you've been trying to hide, then maybe this space is meant for you. Maybe this channel is a place where your heart gets to rest, even just for a few minutes. If you want to hear more stories that feel like they were made just for you, you know what to do. Tap subscribe, like the video, or share it with someone who might be holding the same quiet pain. You are not alone here. You never were. He didn't mean to disappear, not in the way it looks on the outside. He didn't sit there one morning and think, I'm going to hurt her today. I'm going to let her wait, overthink, ache. That's not how it happens. What really happens is this. Something inside him gets touched. Something raw. Something old. You say something honest. Too honest. You get close. Too close. You make him feel, and it's more than he's used to handling. And suddenly, the ground he thought was solid feels unfamiliar. Soft, slippery, dangerous. Because connection, real connection, has a way of lighting up the places we've hidden for years. It makes us visible, not just to another person, but to ourselves. And that kind of intimacy, it terrifies someone who never learned how to hold it. He retreats, not because you scared him, but because his own heart did. He's not ignoring you. He's confronting the part of himself that doesn't believe he deserves you. That doesn't sound romantic. It doesn't excuse the pain you feel. But it does explain why someone who once looked at you like you hung the moon can vanish like fog in morning light. It's not that the feelings weren't real. It's that they were too real, and he doesn't have the tools. The kind of love you give, the quiet safety, the emotional honesty, the presence that's not just rare. It's confronting, especially to someone who spent a lifetime hiding behind charm, performance, or walls of independence. You weren't just another girl to him. That's the point. You were different. You are different, and that difference brought up things he hasn't even looked at. You think he forgot you, but the truth? He remembers you in moments when he least expects it, when he sees something that reminds him of the way you laughed when you didn't think he was watching, when he hears a song that sounds like the car rides you used to share, when he passes the restaurant where your eyes softened over red wine and truth spilled quietly between you. But memory and maturity aren't the same, and knowing you matter isn't the same as being ready to show up for you. He's not gone because you were too much. He's gone because he doesn't know how to be enough, and he doesn't want you to see that. You were never the problem, but maybe you were the mirror. And some people, they look into a mirror like that and see too much of themselves too quickly. And instead of facing it, they turn away. They pretend it wasn't real. They convince themselves you were just another chapter, not realizing you were the whole damn book they weren't ready to read. But let's go deeper, because this isn't just about him. Let's talk about you now. Not the version of you that tried to shrink to make him stay. Not the one that triple-checked every message before sending it, hoping to sound cool, not clingy. Not the version of you that waited in silence, praying his name would show up on your screen again. I mean the real you. The one who knew it was real, even if he pretended it wasn't. The one who felt a pull, a presence, a rare kind of safety with him, and wasn't afraid to name it. You didn't imagine the connection. You weren't too emotional, too intense, or too fast. You were simply ready. You had done enough healing to let someone in. You had reached a point in your journey where love wasn't about proving anything, it was about sharing. And when you offered that, when you offered you, he panicked. But that doesn't mean you were wrong to open. You didn't misread the signs. You didn't invent the spark. What you felt was real. It just wasn't met. And that's the heartbreak, isn't it? Not that he didn't care, but that he did and still couldn't stay, that he felt it too and still walked away, that he saw your heart and chose silence instead of stepping forward. You keep thinking maybe if you had been a little more patient, a little less open, a little less honest. But that's not the truth. That's the wound talking. That's the echo of a younger version of you who was taught that love had to be earned, and if it disappeared, it meant you failed. But what if that's not what this is? What if this isn't abandonment? What if this is revealing? What if the silence is not your punishment, but your protection from someone who wasn't ready to meet you where you stood? You see, the hardest thing to accept is that someone can feel deeply for you and still not choose you. Not because you're not worth choosing, but because choosing you would require them to face parts of themselves they've avoided their entire life. And not everyone is ready for that level of truth. He might be sitting with his phone in his hand right now, wanting to say something, wanting to explain, wanting to come back. But then the fear kicks in. The shame, the deep, paralyzing voice that says, "You're going to mess this up. You don't know how to love like she does. You'll only hurt her." So he chooses silence, not because it's easier, but because it's familiar. And so here you are left with 1,000 questions and no closure. But maybe that silence is the answer. Maybe his absence is the message. And maybe, just maybe, the next step isn't waiting for him to come back. It's reclaiming the version of you that showed up fully without apology and understanding that her love was never the problem. There's something sacred about a woman who doesn't close her heart after it's been broken, who doesn't harden, who doesn't become bitter, even when the silence cuts deep and the waiting feels like abandonment in slow motion. That's you. You still believe in love, even after what happened, even after being left without a goodbye, without explanation, without the decency of closure. And maybe you wouldn't admit it out loud, but a part of you still checks your phone sometimes, still wonders if he'll say something, still hopes it wasn't all just in your head. Let me tell you something that might hurt, but it will also free you. He saw your love. He felt it. It reached him, but he didn't know what to do with it. Because real love doesn't always feel like fireworks. Sometimes it feels like stillness, like peace, like home. And for someone who's only known chaos, that kind of love feels suspicious, unsafe, even threatening. You didn't lose him. He lost himself, and in the process, he lost you. Not because you left, but because you stayed too long in a place that stopped nourishing you. You held on with open hands, hoping that gentleness would teach him how to stay. But some people only learn through loss, through silence, through the absence of what once made them feel alive. And one day, maybe not now, maybe not soon, he will remember you, not in passing, not as a memory, but as a turning point. He will remember the way your words slowed his mind, the way your touch softened something he didn't know was clenched, the way your presence asked nothing of him except the truth, and how terrifying that was. And it will haunt him, not because he did something wrong, but because he wasn't ready for something so right. But that haunting is not your burden. That journey belongs to him. Yours is different. Yours is about learning how to let go with love, how to walk away without resentment, how to grieve someone who is still alive, still breathing, still posting like nothing happened. How to close a chapter that never got its ending. Because closure isn't something they give you. It's something you give yourself. It's the moment you stop rereading the last message, trying to decode his silence. It's the moment you choose your peace over your curiosity. It's the moment you realize you don't need his words to validate your worth because your presence already proved it. And in that moment, you start to come back to yourself. Not the you who's waiting, but the you who's becoming. Becoming isn't loud. It doesn't come with fireworks or announcements. It creeps in gently, like morning light on tired skin. It shows up in the smallest ways, the first full breath you take without thinking of him. The song you once skipped now playing freely. The mirror no longer holding questions, just quiet recognition. You don't wake up one day healed. You wake up and choose yourself again, even when part of you still aches. And that choice? It's everything. Because when he pulled away, something ancient in you stirred. Not just heartbreak, but memory. The memory of every time you had to chase love. Every time love meant proving, pleasing, shrinking. Every time you became smaller just to feel seen. And maybe that's what this really is. Not just a story of a man who couldn't stay, but a story of you finally seeing that little girl inside, the one who's been asking for so long. Am I too much? If I don't earn it, will they leave? You didn't lose him. You found her, and she's worth everything. Because here's the quiet truth. Love doesn't always arrive wrapped in romance. Sometimes it arrives through the people who walk away, so you can finally walk toward yourself. The pain isn't proof that you were foolish. It's proof that you were all in. You loved with your chest open, with trembling hands and steady eyes. You said, "Here, this is me." And even when he backed away, you didn't close. You didn't collapse. You stayed. You remained soft in a world that taught you to harden. That is not weakness. That is divine strength. And yes, I know, sometimes it doesn't feel strong. Sometimes it feels like unraveling, like you're breaking in all the places he left untouched. But what if the unraveling isn't the end? What if it's the beginning, the shedding of roles you played to be loved, the releasing of fantasies that were never yours to carry, the falling away of illusions so what's real can finally rise? And maybe, if you look closely, you'll see it happening already. The way your voice has changed. The way your silence feels different now, not hollow, but full. The way your loneliness is no longer about missing him, but meeting you. There is a version of you on the other side of this. She doesn't need answers to feel whole. She doesn't confuse absence with rejection. She knows love, real love, will never require her to dim her light just to be held. And when it finds her, as it will, it won't flinch at her depth. It won't pull away from her truth. It won't need her to prove her worth. It will just know, and until then, so will she. And maybe now, in this quiet moment, you're starting to feel it. Not a surge, not a sudden wave of relief, but a soft awareness, like your soul exhaling after holding its breath for too long. It was a trigger, a mirror, a soul whisper saying, "You're ready to look at this now, not to punish you, but to reveal the hidden place where your love has always wanted to be seen, not by him, but by you." Because deep down, you didn't just want him to choose you. You wanted to choose you too, but no one ever taught you how. You were taught to stay quiet, to keep peace, to be easy to love, to bend without breaking, to smile when it hurt, to wait. Always wait for someone to see your worth and declare it out loud. And that's why his silence cut so deep. Not just because he left, but because his absence echoed every time love left without reason. Every time someone said, "I love you," with their mouth, but "you're not enough," with their actions. Every time you were told you were wanted, only to feel forgotten when it really mattered. You were trying to rewrite a wound, but you were doing it through someone who didn't even know how to hold a pen. And you are not here to be rewritten by people who can't read you. You are a full chapter, already whole, already enough, and now comes the reckoning. Not with him, with yourself. Because this is where the true love story begins, in the decision to stop chasing explanations and start embracing truth. The truth that the closure you crave isn't his job. The truth that his distance is not a measurement of your worth. The truth that your heart is still beating, still open, still worthy, even after being left with no answers, especially after that. So you gather the fragments, you breathe through the ache, you stop begging ghosts for validation, and you begin to build something he never gave you: safety, with yourself. Because the man who disappears when things get real, he's showing you something vital. He's not showing you how little you matter. He's showing you how much you've outgrown pretending you don't. And when that lands, When it really lands, you stop asking, "Why didn't he choose me?" and start whispering, "Thank you for showing me I already have." Some days it will still sting. Let's not pretend healing is a perfect arc. It's not. It's a spiral. You'll be fine for weeks, breathing deeper, sleeping better, even smiling without it feeling forced. And then suddenly, his name will pop up. Or a memory. Or just the ache of wondering what could have been, and your heart will ache again. But this time, you won't fall apart. This time, you'll watch the ache like a passing storm. You'll feel it, yes, but it won't consume you. Because now you know what it is. Grief. Not weakness. Not foolishness. Just the grieving of a story that almost became something but didn't. And it's okay to miss it. It's okay to miss him, but don't let that longing rewrite the truth. He didn't leave because you weren't enough. He left because he wasn't ready to be seen. And you? You saw him. You saw everything: his soul, his softness, his potential. That's the magic of your heart. You see past performance. You feel the quiet pain people try to hide. And you meet it with love instead of judgment. But here's what you're learning now. Seeing someone's soul doesn't mean you're responsible for healing it. That's not your burden, and you've carried that weight long enough. You've made excuses for people who vanished, justified emotional crumbs, tried to decode silence like it was a puzzle with a prize at the end. But silence is the message. It says, "I can't meet you here." And now you listen. Not to the noise of overthinking, but to your own voice, the one you silenced for him. She's returning now. She's louder than the longing, wiser than the fantasy, stronger than the version of you that begged to be understood. And she knows something you're just beginning to believe. You're not here to wait for someone to decide you're enough. You're here to become so full in your own love, your own truth, your own knowing that anyone who isn't ready simply fades in your rear view, not as a loss, but as a lesson. You get to mourn the connection without mourning yourself. You get to feel the pain without making it a definition. You get to let go not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring about you more. And maybe that's what love really is. Not chasing what's uncertain, but honoring what's real. Starting with the one person who's always been here, quietly hoping you'd finally choose her. You. It's strange, isn't it? How someone can hold so much space in your mind while holding none in your life. How you can replay moments, words, touches like they happened yesterday, and yet to him, it's already faded. Like he's moved on, like it meant less. Or worse, like it never meant anything at all. That's the part that guts you. Not just that he left, but how easily he seemed to do it. As if all the hours, the vulnerability, the pieces of yourself you handed him so gently were just forgotten, buried under his next distraction, his next escape. But let me tell you something that might pierce the fog you've been living in. People who run from their own emotions are never free. They're just avoiding, and what he's avoiding now, it isn't you. It's the part of himself that came alive with you. The part that felt safe for the first time in years. The part that almost believed he could finally stop pretending. But pretending is all he's ever known. So when the real thing showed up, not fireworks, not obsession, not fantasy, but presence, it scared the hell out of him. You weren't drama. You weren't chaos. You were truth. And truth is terrifying when someone has built a life around performance. That's why he ghosted. That's why he disappeared. Not because he didn't feel, but because he did. And feeling for him is unfamiliar terrain. He doesn't know how to walk it. So he runs, and you're left with echoes, with silence that screams, with closure that never arrives. But here's the shift. You don't need it anymore. You don't need the text that explains, the apology that soothes, the return that never comes, because you are learning that peace isn't about getting answers. It's about deciding the questions no longer define you. It's about choosing not to turn your life into a waiting room for someone else's growth. It's about realizing that every time you checked your phone hoping for a message, you were really just hoping for yourself to come back. And now you are. Little by little, word by word, breath by breath, you are remembering that love does not mean losing yourself. That intimacy does not require invisibility. That the right connection will never demand that you prove you are worthy of being chosen. You already are. The version of you that stayed open. The version that kept her heart soft even when it hurt. The version that dared to believe in love, even when it didn't come back. She's not naive. She's holy. She's the one who will carry you forward. She's the one who knows your worth was never up for debate. There is power in the woman who finally stops chasing silence. The one who no longer scans a crowd hoping to see the eyes that once looked at her like she was everything. The one who no longer wonders if she was too soft, too intense, too deep, but begins to see that maybe she was simply too real for someone still pretending. You see, we live in a world that celebrates detachment, coolness, games. But there is something revolutionary about a woman who refuses to play small in love, who loves out loud, who feels deeply, who doesn't hide. That was you. You didn't pretend. You didn't posture. You didn't hold back just to keep from scaring him. You showed up fully, not because you were desperate, but because you were ready. And he wasn't, not just emotionally, existentially, because choosing someone like you requires a man to choose himself first, to look in the mirror and face everything he's been avoiding, his fears, his doubts. The little boy inside who never felt safe enough to be still. That boy grew into a man who disappears when love gets close. You weren't the first woman to love him, but you were the first woman to see him. And that's why he left. Because being seen, truly seen, is the most intimate experience on earth. And for someone who doesn't know who he really is, it feels like exposure, not love. But let's not make this about him anymore. Let's bring it back to the woman who stayed. The woman who cried into pillows late at night, then woke up and went to work like her heart wasn't bleeding quietly inside her chest. The woman who smiled at friends, replied to texts, showed up for others, all while wondering if she should have said less, felt less, loved less. You shouldn't have. Don't let his disappearance rewrite your truth. You didn't scare him off with your love. You just offered him something real, and he didn't know how to hold it. So let him go, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with grace. Let him go with the quiet understanding that you are no longer a place he gets to return to when the world is cold. Let him go knowing that what he couldn't receive, someone else is praying to find. Let him go not because you didn't care, but because you finally care enough about you to stop handing your heart to someone who doesn't know what to do with it. You don't need to be chosen to feel valuable. You don't need to be chased to feel wanted. You don't need a reply to feel whole. You are whole, even in the silence, even in the space he left behind, especially there. Because now, you finally have room to fill that space with something sacred, yourself. There's a moment in every healing where the pain softens, not because it's gone, but because you've grown around it. It doesn't sting the same. The tears come less often. The questions start to dissolve, and in their place, something else begins to rise. Clarity, not the kind you force, not the kind that comes from overthinking or digging for reasons, but the kind that arrives quiet, sure, unmistakable. You look back, and instead of longing, there's understanding. Instead of self-blame, there's self-compassion. Instead of why didn't he stay, there's thank God I didn't keep waiting. Because you start to see it clearly. The way your heart bent for someone who never asked what it cost you. The way you made space for him without realizing you were shrinking your own. The way you mistook survival chemistry for connection. And maybe the hardest truth of all, the way you were trying to fix something in him that you still hadn't healed in yourself. But here you are now, different, stronger, softer in places that used to be armored, firmer in places that used to bend too easily. You speak slower, you pause longer, you listen not just to others but to yourself. That ache you carried, it's not gone, but it no longer owns you. It's just a scar now, a reminder, not of how you were broken, but of how deeply you once loved and how gracefully you let go. And maybe one day, he'll come back. Maybe he'll send that message. Maybe he'll say everything you waited months to hear. But by then, you'll be somewhere else, not out of reach, but out of need. You won't need the apology. You won't crave the explanation, because you've already written your own ending, one where you are not the girl who was left behind, but the woman who rose. A woman who finally understood that the deepest abandonment wasn't his, it was hers. Every time she abandoned her truth just to feel chosen. Every time she silenced her needs just to stay wanted. Every time she made excuses for behavior that hurt because she was scared that love would leave if she spoke up. But not anymore. Now you choose you, even when it's hard, even when it's lonely, even when no one claps for it. Because you've learned the most radical act of self-love isn't bubble baths or pretty quotes. It's boundaries. It's walking away from almost. It's letting people go when they show you they can't hold you with care. You don't hassle now. You don't convince. You don't wait in doorways hoping someone finally realizes what they lost. Because you know, and that knowing is your freedom. And here we are, not at the beginning, not in the middle, but at the place you never thought you'd reach, the part where you're no longer waiting for him to come back. Because you've already come back to yourself. This moment is the quiet power no one tells you about. The moment where you look around and realize that life kept moving, and so did you. And not in a way that pretends it didn't hurt, but in a way that says, I didn't stop living just because someone couldn't love me the way I deserved. You start to smile for no reason. You sleep better, your energy returns. And when people ask how you're doing, you don't have to fake it. You're not pretending you're over it, but you're no longer under it. It's not drowning you anymore. It's just part of your story. Not the end, not the definition, just a chapter that taught you how much you were willing to give and how little you were willing to accept ever again. And when love comes again, and it will, you'll meet it from a different place. Not desperation, not fear, not the aching need to be seen, but presence, power, peace. You'll know what it feels like when someone chooses you without hesitation, when someone doesn't run at the first sign of depth, when someone doesn't need to be convinced to stay. And you'll know how to receive it not because they make you feel worthy, but because you finally believe that you are. So if he comes back, let him, not into your bed, not into your heart, but into the awareness that he was a turning point, not a destination. Let him see what he couldn't stay for. Let him feel the full weight of the version of you he couldn't hold, not to punish him, but to honor you, because you've done something he never could. You stayed for the truth. You stayed when it hurt. You stayed when it was unclear. You stayed long enough to meet yourself, all of yourself, and you didn't run. And maybe that's the most important love story of all. The one where the girl who gave her heart away learns how to give it back to herself and holds it with both hands trembling, yes, but open, brave, whole. You are no longer someone who waits. You are no longer someone who settles. You are no longer someone who mistakes silence for love. You are someone who listens, who sees, who feels, and chooses fully, fiercely, finally herself. And if this spoke to something in you, if it reached a place you've been hiding, or helped a truth rise to the surface, then maybe you were never really alone in this. Maybe you just needed the reminder. And if you want more moments like this, more stories that see you, more truth without the fluff, then stay close. You're safe here. You're home here. Don't forget to share this if someone else needs to hear it. Subscribe if your heart needs more of this kind of truth. And breathe deeply. You're doing better than you think.